So yeah, being able to manage what you measure, I love that, Patrick. That's a good little tagline.
I just came up with it. I've never heard it before.
Genius.
Cameron, I feel like saying welcome to FRAXN, but you've been here for a few years, pretty much since inception back in 2022. But at least welcome to our channel here.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So Cameron's CPA, our director of finance, and also oversees all things service here at FRAXN. So pretty much tells me to stay out of the way and let him do his job. Only sometimes. So when I think back of having a pest control business, I could probably tell you, hey, 2020, 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on. This is how much revenue we did. That's all we focused on, was really just driving top line revenue and hoping one day it would all work out, as the chips may fall, if you will. But I've realized along the way that it's probably not the most important number to focus on. Cameron, if there was a certain metric or number that our owners should look at, what would you say it is? Yeah, I mean, revenue is obviously a very important number. If you're not bringing in revenue, you're not getting more and more clients, then obviously you're kind of putting a ceiling on the business. But I would say more importantly, in my mind at least, is looking at your margin, specifically gross profit margin. You can have a lot of revenue, but if you're really inefficient on servicing those clients, gross profit margin is going to be poor, and you're taking money out of your pocket, right? So sometimes it's actually better to have a little less revenue, but be more efficient with your margins with servicing clients. You'll actually see more cash in your pocket at the end of the day. Specifically, gross profit margin, the way we think about it is, what are the direct costs that go into providing that service for a client? So kind of big three expense groups you can think of are technician compensation, vehicle expenses, and then the materials and chemical supplies you use to actually service the client on the job. There might be some other smaller direct costs in there, but those are kind of the three major groups of costs we're looking at to calculate gross profits. It's just revenue minus those direct costs, those expenses. You might hear the term cost of services or cost of goods sold. But it's just revenue minus those costs give you your gross profit. And then that gross profit as a percentage of revenue is your gross profit margin. So it's interesting when I ask new people that are looking at FRAXN, hey, what's your gross profit margin? And sometimes there's a misunderstanding between gross profit margin and they hear the word profit. And so I think they're jumping all the way to the bottom of a profit and loss statement. Like, hey, I made 10% or 15% profit. I really hope that's not their gross profit margin. Yeah. Someone might come and say, hey, my chart of accounts, I just got it out of QuickBooks. Like, it's the default chart of accounts. And so I don't know exactly how QuickBooks thinks about, pest control or lawn care, HVAC or whatever. So when it comes to talking apples to apples, tell us like P&L, just top to bottom in summary, how they should think about gross profit in terms of that again. The top of the P&L is going to be your revenue section. So depending on the services you have, you're going to list those revenue accounts out. The way we think about it is, you really want to find the different services. So pest versus termite versus rodent versus, whatever you might have, bed bug. And then also capture the recurring versus one-time piece of it. So you're going to have each of those accounts and the chart of accounts, and those will be at the top and in revenue. And then you're going to have your cost of services, right, which are those direct costs that go directly, that's the term, right, into servicing the client, right? So the big three groups there are going to be technician compensation, so their salaries, production commission, bonuses, what have you, overtime. You're going to have vehicle expenses, which obviously you incur getting technicians from job to job, right? So you're going to have fuel, vehicle insurance, any repairs and maintenance on those vehicles. And then the other big group is going to be your materials, chemicals, supplies, right? So whatever chemicals or material costs you have related to servicing clients. And so those are going to be the big three, right? And so you have all those expense accounts listed kind of in the separate cost of service section.
right? Revenue minus those cost of services gives you gross profit once again. And then below that, you're going to have your operating expenses, which those accounts are going to be any expense account that doesn't directly go into servicing a client. So your non-technician compensation, office rent, advertising, marketing, general liability insurance, software subscriptions, right? Everything else, all those accounts will be listed kind of in that operating expense section of the chart of accounts. And those are kind of your major three groups on the P&L: revenue, cost of service, operating expenses.
Cool. That's really helpful. So let's take pest control, for example. I know as companies are growing, maybe they're sub 500,000. There's a lot of variability, volatility. Hey, is the owner, operator, founder out in the truck, or is it in the office? And that's going to really affect gross profit margin. But let's say companies over 500 grand. What would you say is a healthy gross profit margin?
Yeah, so I'd say we're ideally getting clients to that 65% gross profit margin, right? That's a common area we see our more successful clients kind of living at. I would say we wouldn't want to see anything under 55%. So if you're flirting with 55 and lower, I think there's definitely some red flags or some areas that need to be looked at and improved on, whether that's inefficient technicians, whether they're not producing, or you might be overpaying. Maybe routing's inefficient, so vehicle expenses are a little higher than they should be. Can take a look at what your chemicals are costing and terms vendors are giving you, so on and so forth. But there's probably some inefficiency somewhere in that cycle if you're at 55% and lower.
Cameron, you talked about all the great ways of decreasing the direct cost. Hey, watch your callbacks and retreats. That's going to cut down on tech labor, chemical supplies, materials, fuel, vehicle maintenance. That's great. What's the other lever that oftentimes people ignore or just don't even approach?
Yeah, so the other kind of lever you're talking about, right? Decreasing cost, but the other one would be increasing price, right? So assuming you have the same volume, same cost, if you increase price, your margin will also go up. At FRAXN, we have a really cool tool on our dashboard. It's called Goal Seek, but basically you can isolate the various levers for certain metrics. So if we take gross profit margin, for example, the Goal Seek tool very clearly shows you which levers impact the metric. So in this case, price and costs. And then you can toggle those and change those in real time, see how a 5% price increase would impact gross margin, or maybe a 2% savings on your variable costs or your direct costs, how that could impact gross profit margin. So it really makes it tangible. I think hits it home for clients when they're using this tool. It's very easy for them to see, well, hey, I haven't done a price increase in a couple of years. If I do X amount, well, that could really boost gross profit margin. Or if I do Y amount, I could really do it. I might lose some volume, but my margins would significantly increase. Instead of them conceptually saying, oh yeah, lower costs or increased price, that would probably help. Right? It puts numbers to it and makes it more actionable for them to see how those levers, when you slide them and edit them, how it can really impact those metrics.
Across all of our clients, you definitely see, lower gross profit margins, higher gross profit margins. That's nature of the beast here. What things set those apart that have great gross profit margins from those that are lacking?
So I think, here at FRAXN, we have a standardized chart of accounts. So, first, before we get into comparisons or benchmarks, right, making sure everyone's on the same chart of accounts is very important, right? You can't compare apples to oranges. So assuming everyone's on apples to apples, including the same types of costs within gross profit, I'd say the biggest thing is going to be your technician labor, right? And so since this is a variable cost, right, meaning the cost of technician compensation is directly attributable in correlation with revenue, right? You can look at it as a percentage of revenue. In theory, as revenue goes up, technician compensation would as well, and that relationship would stay pretty consistent. So looking at it as a percentage of revenue is really important. What we see when clients have lower gross profit margins, that percentage of revenue tends to be higher, indicating they're being inefficient in one of two areas. with technicians. They're either paying their technicians too much for the output, or they're not getting enough output for what they're costing, right? So I guess to make it more real, if you will, you're paying a technician hourly. They're going to pay them 8 hours a day or however long they're working, no matter what. If they're only getting, making up numbers here, 16 stops in a day versus 20 stops in a day, right? That percentage of revenue is going to be higher because they're not being as productive as they should be. Vice versa, maybe their production commission, right? As a percentage of the job, what are they getting? Right? Are you giving them 26% as opposed to 22%? There's those little things to look at. And that's typically where we see margin erosion from clients. But you might also have vehicle insurance that's way too high. You might have materials and supplies costs that are too high. But typically the culprit's going to be your technician compensation. And so reviewing that with clients on a monthly basis, FRAXN, it really helps them identify and call that out for them. So it's something that's always top of mind, and something they can analyze and look at. Obviously a lot of our clients are busy running a business, and so they're not sitting back for 10 hours a day, 13 hours a day, whatever it might be, thinking about technician compensation, what percentage of revenue is it? And so being an advocate for them on that and partnering with them on that in these reviews, helping them identify some of these red flags, some of these things that they might need to take a look at or analyze, right? And call that out for them and kind of be that watchdog for them, right? So they can still run the business and not have to do the nitty gritty like we are. So that's probably the biggest area.
Yeah. I remember sitting down with the CEO of a top 10 firm in pest control and discussing specifically the correlation between route density and gross profit margin. And I can see they have still poured a lot of money into one particular market, just doing acquisition after acquisition. And it was already their top performing market even before these last few acquisitions for them. And what I somehow got a bad rap for not liking door to door. That's not the case. I don't know where that comment came from. He's a current client today, but that was what his final accusation before he came on to FRAXN. It's like, is it true you don't like door to door? Like, no. In fact, I love looking at the gross profit margin of our door to door companies, or the companies that do door to door, right, in pest control. And their gross profit margin is definitely set apart. And I know they have great pricing and great route density. You can't make money behind the windshield. In fact, it'll cost you money if you're just driving around aimlessly, right? You haven't kept it all in a tight area. And so, yes, there are other costs related to door to door. It's not cheap by any sense of that, but when I look at the gross profit margin of the door-to-door companies versus the others, I'm like, they're doing something right. And so I love seeing that and think about route density and making sure that those stops are grouped together and that pricing is great. So for the record, I do not dislike door-to-door.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right. Our door-to-door clients, or our clients that use door-to-door, I should say, you can definitely see their gross profit margin stand out on average compared to non-door-to-door. Right. Your exact point, pricing's traditionally pretty good. Density is obviously very, very good, which makes for really, really nice gross profit margins. You also mentioned there's a cost associated with it, right, which isn't captured in gross profit, but you can be very successful, especially in terms of gross profit margin with door-to-door.
Cameron, we have groups of franchisees that are on FRAXN together, kind of like together as almost like a mini association. We have like peer groups that are on FRAXN and make sure, hey, their numbers are in sync. And you earlier spoke about like apples to apples versus apples to oranges. One thing I think about with gross profit margin in particular is how clients just like dig into the benchmarking data. I think they might be excited to get their P&L, or they might not be excited to get their P&L a certain month, but they want to see that benchmarking data. Like, how are they doing against the industry, against their peers, if you will? And gross profit margins, I would say, is the first thing that I want them to go to. They already know their revenue coming out of the month. Then financials come in. and they're waiting to see like, hey, how's my gross profit margin trending against others in the industry? And so I think it's a little bit of that like competition we have. Maybe it's unspoken, and we have that segmented by revenue groupings and also by region. So they have different comparisons there for themselves. But within those like mastermind groups, they're also to say like, hey, how's your gross profit tracking? What things are you doing to move in the right direction? I wonder if you like kind of peek behind the scenes. What things have you heard that help people with their gross profit margin? I know we've come out of like an inflationary period or still in it. Fuel fluctuates, our costs fluctuate. Labor pool is definitely different than it was just a few years ago. Price sensitivity. Have you picked up on any like bits and pieces from our clients?
We definitely see clients discussing that and focusing on that, or we're calling it out for them, right? I think of Florida specifically. Obviously, I have a lot of clients in Florida. For whatever reason, insurance carriers want to charge much higher premiums in Florida than they do in other states. That's an area where when we see a client with vehicle insurance really getting out of whack or too high, we can let them know, hey, even by Florida standards, for instance, vehicle insurance is a lot higher than it probably should be. It'd be worth your while to shop this or connect with brokers that could potentially help here, right? There can be 1.5%, 2% margin saved just on vehicle insurance, and some of the clients we've worked with, and helping them finding better providers or more affordable providers. Yeah. Vehicle fuel, you mentioned, Patrick, right? Thankfully in Texas, I think we actually have relatively cheap fuel, but I know other parts of the country don't and might have different taxes or things on top of what we might have. So that's where routing can be really, really crucial, right? Making sure that your routing is efficient, because the more you're on the road, obviously, the more fuel you're going to incur. Well, I hope with a lot of things, obviously, but vehicle fuel being a big one for sure. So yeah, those are some areas that, clients have talked about. We've discussed with clients, called out for them. Just kind of help them go a layer or two deeper, as opposed to just being like, oh, gas is high. It's, well, why is gas high? What are some potential things you can control? Because obviously you're not going to be able to control the price. So what are some things you can control to actually address the higher expenses there and mitigate them to the extent you can?
You're meeting with our clients monthly, giving them monthly financials. Hopefully their gross profit margin is trending in the right direction. Can you see that as an industry, or maybe like a seasonality, or maybe different geographies? Have you picked up on any trends?
Yeah, definitely. So, we won't speak for the industry as a whole, but like you said, our 250 clients more or less that we work with, recent years, I would say we're definitely seeing an upward trend, whether that's because costs are actually going down, macroly, industry-wide, or maybe our clients are just becoming more sophisticated, working with us and helping them read a P&L, understand the different components of it, kind of going that layer or two layers deeper, where it's, okay, I can read this, but then what's an action item or what's something I can actually take away and apply to my business and see real results, right? So we kind of mentioned the things already, like the technician compensation, efficient routing, helping with vehicle fuel, right? Shopping vehicle insurance, maybe negotiating better terms if you can with vendors, bulk discounts, whatever it might be. There's various ways to impact gross profit margin and see improvement there. And I think, once again, I'll speak for our clients and working with us, doing these monthly reviews over 1, 2, 3 years now, we've definitely seen upward trends in margins, working with our clients, helping them understand what it is and what they can do to improve it. So whether that be through a review, whether that be through our dashboard, using the Goal Seek tool, like I mentioned, using the benchmarking capabilities we have so they can see, oh, here's what other folks in my region are doing, or more macroly across the country, Cameron, what are they doing that I'm not doing, right? And obviously we wouldn't divulge any sensitive information or lose any anonymity there, but helping them identify those points and improve them, I think has definitely been huge for our clients, and we've really seen upward trends in margins because of it.
I love, right, you can manage what you measure. We have 13 key performance indicators or KPIs. I think 2 of those are dedicated to gross profit margin. And so they're able to set targets with you as the account manager and say like, hey, looking back, hey, we set these ahead of time. This is how much revenue we want to do in September, October, November, December, so on. And then they get their financial review and they could quickly see, is it a green check or a red X? Like, did I set out and do what I said I was going to do? Right. Then that's on their radar. It's a lot easier to do that than to get lost in the just a whole P&L with all the different lines and all the different numbers. And then what about the balance sheet? So statement of cash flow is like these generic reports versus, hey, just focus on these 13 KPIs and you will build a tremendous business. Right.
Yeah. I love what you said there. You can manage what you measure. And obviously if we were just to hand a report over to someone, all the information's there, but it can be overwhelming to your point. And I think actually having someone on our end review it with you, month to month, it really builds confidence in your ability to identify key takeaways, whether it be the KPIs, whether it be a specific metric on the P&L specific account, cash flow, whatever it might be, right? There's going to be things we walk you through as account managers that I think really helps you digest the report. So yeah, being able to manage what you measure, I love that, Patrick. That's a good little tagline.
I just came up with it. I've never heard it before.
Genius.
Cameron, thank you for coming on here, really breaking down gross profit margin. I know it's a critical number. It's not all about revenue as much as that's what we usually talk about in the industry. So thanks for that. And I look forward to our 2025 study that's coming out soon, so we can see gross profit margin, how it's trending across the industry, how it's trending across our different regions that we measure. So want everyone out there, make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel so you can be the first one to get it in your hands.
Yeah, thanks for having me, PB. Appreciate the time here and the ability to talk to you guys about gross profit margin and why it's an important number, why revenue is not the end all be all, right? So I appreciate you having me on. Look forward to coming on in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Cameron.